Welcome to the 1,000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 406th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Adi ended his verses, he went to his lodgings, and lay that night restless and without appetite for the food of sleep. Now on the morrow, Moriah accosted him, and he received her kindly, though before he would not incline to her, and said to her, What is thy will? Quoth she, I have a want of thee. And quoth he, Name it, for by Allah thou shalt not ask me aught, but I will give it to thee. She told him that she loved him, and her want of him was that he would grant her a lover's privacy, and he agreed to do her will, on condition that she would serve him with Hind, and devise some device to bring them together. Then he took her into Vintner's tavern in one of the by-streets in Hurrah, and lay with her, after which she returned to Hind and asked her, Dost thou not long to see Adi? She answered, How can this be? Indeed, my longing for him makes me restless, and no repose has left me since yesterday. Quoth Moriah, I will appoint him to be in such place where thou canst look on him from the palace. Quoth Hind, Do what thou wilt, and agreed with her upon the place. So Adi came, and the princess looked out upon him, and when she saw him, she was likely to topple down from the palace top, and said, O Moriah, except thou bring him to me this night, I shall die. So saying, she fell to the ground in a fainting fit, and her serving women lifted her up and bore her into the palace, whilst Moriah hastened to Al-Nu'man, and discovered the whole matter to him with perfect truth, telling him that indeed she was mad for the love of Adi, and except he marry her to him, she must be put to shame and die of love for him, which would disgrace her father among the Arabs, adding to the end, There is no cure for this but wedlock. The king bowed his head a while in thought, and exclaimed again and again, Verily, we are in Allah's, and upon him we are returning. Then said he, Woe to thee! How shall the marriage be brought about, seeing I mislike to open the matter? And she said, He is yet more ardently in love, and yet more desired of her than she is of him. And I will so order the affair that he shall be unaware of his case, and being known to thee, but to do not betray thyself, O king. Then she went to Adi, and after acquainting him with everything, said, Make a feast, and bed the king thereto. And when the wine hath gotten the better of him, ask of him his daughter, for he will not refuse thee. Quoth Adi, I fear lest this enrage him against me, and be the cause of enmity between us. But quoth she, I came not to thee till I had settled the whole affair with him. Then she returned to Al-Nu'man, and said to him, Seek of Adi that he entertain thee in his house. Replied the king, There is no harm in that. And after 3 days besought Adi to give him and his lords the morning meal in his house. He consented, and the king went to him, and when the wine had taken effect on Al-Nu'man, Adi rose and sought of him his daughter in wedlock. He consented, and married them, and brought her to him after 3 days. And they abode at Al-Nu'man's court in all solace of life and its delight. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 407th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Adi abode with Hind bint Al-Nu'man bin Munzir 3 years in all solace of life, and its delight, after which the time the king was wroth with Adi, and slew him. Hind mourned for him with grievous mourning, and built her an hermitage outside the city, whither she retired and became a religious, weeping and bewailing her husband till she died. And her hermitage is seen to this day in the suburbs of Hira. They also tell a tale of Dibble al-Khuziyah with a lady and Muslim bin al-Walid. Quoth Dibble al-Khuziyah, I was sitting one day at the gate of Al-Karak, when a damsel came down. Never saw I fairer faced or better formed than she, walking with a voluptuous swaying gait, and ravishing all beholders with her lithe and undulating pace. Now, as my eyes fell on her, I was captivated by her, and my vitals trembled, and meseemed my heart flew from my breast. So I stood before her, and I accosted her with this verse. The tears of these eyes find easy release, but sleep flies these eyelids without surcease. Whereon she turned her face, and looking at me straightway, made answer with this distich. A trifle this as his eyes be sore, when her eyes say yes to his love caprice. I was astounded at the readiness of her reply, and the fluency of her speech, and rejoined with this verse. Say, doth heart of my fair incline to him, whose tears like a swelling stream increase? And she answered me without hesitation thus. If thou crave our love, know that love's a loan, and a debt to be paid by us twain apiece. Never entered my ears aught sweeter than her speech, nor ever saw I brighter than her face. So I changed rhyme and rhythm to her in my wonder at her words, and repeated this couplet. Will fate with joy of union ever bless our sight, and one desireful one with one unite? She smiled at this, never saw a fairer than her mouth, nor sweeter than her lips, and answered me without stay or delay in that following distich. Pray, tell me what hath fate to do betwixt us twain. Thou art fate, so bless our eyne with union and delight. At this I sprang up and fell to kissing her hands, and cried, I had not thought that fortune would vouchsafe me such occasion. Do thou follow me, not of bidding or against thy will, but of grace of thee and thy favour to me. Then I went on, and she after me. Now at that time I had no lodging I deemed fit for the like of her, but Muslim bin al-Walid was my fast friend, and he had a handsome house. So I made for his abode and knocked at his door, whereupon he came out, and I saluted him, saying, 'Tis for a time like this that friends are treasured up. And he replied, with love and gladness, come in, you twain. So we entered, but found money scarce with him. However, he gave me a kerchief, saying, Carry it to the bazaar, and sell it to buy food and what else thou needest. I took the handkerchief, and hastening to the market sold it, and bought what we required for victuals and other matters. But when I returned, I found that the Muslim had retired with her to an underground chamber. When he heard my step, he hurried out and said to me, Allah requite thee the kindness thou hast done of me, O Abu Ali, and reward thee in time to come and reckon it of thy good deeds on the day of doom. So saying, he took from me the food and wine, and shut the door in my face. His words enraged me, and I knew not what to do, but he stood behind the door, shaking for mirth. And when he saw me, thus he said to me, I conjure thee on my life, O Abu Ali, tell who it was composed this couplet. I lay in her arms all night, leaving him to sleep foul-hearted, but clean of staff. At this, my rage redoubled, and I replied, He who wrote this other couplet, one, I wish him in belt 1,000 horns, exceeding in mighty height Manaf. Then I began to abuse him and reproach him with the foulness of his actions and his lack of honor, and he was silent, never uttering a word. But when I had finished, he smiled and said, Out on thee, O fool! Thou hast entered my house and sold my kerchief and spent my silver, so with whom art thou wroth, O pimp? Then he left me and went away to her, whilst I said, By Allah, thou art right to twit me as a nincompoop and pander. Then I left his door and went away in sore condition, and I feel its trace in my heart unto this very day. For I never had my will of her, nor indeed ever heard of her more. And amongst other tales is that of Isaac of Mosul and the merchant. Quoth Isaac bin Ibrahim al-Mosuli, If so chanced that one day, feeling weary of being on duty at the palace and attendance upon the caliph, I mounted horse and went forth at the break of dawn, having a mind to ride out into the open country and take my pleasure. So I said to my servants, If there come a messenger from the caliph or another, say that I set out at daybreak upon a pressing business, and that ye know not whither I am gone. Then I fared forth alone, and went round about the city till the sun waxed hot, when I halted in a great thoroughfare known as Al-Haram. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 408th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Ishak bin Ibrahim the Mosuli continued. When the sun waxed hot, I halted in a great thoroughfare known as Al-Haram to take shelter in the shade, and found in it a spacious wing of a house which projected out over the street. And I stood there but a little while before there came up a black slave leading an ass ridden by a damsel, and under her were housings set with gems and pearls, and upon her were the richest of clothes. Richness can go no farther, and I saw that she was elegant of make, with languorous looks and graceful mind. I asked one of the passers-by who she was, and he said, "She is a singer." So I fell in love with her at first sight. Hardly could I keep my seat on horseback. She entered the house at whose gates I stood, and as I was planning a device to gain access to her, there came up 2 men, young and comely, who asked admission, and the housemaster gave them leave to enter. So they alighted, and I also, and they entered, and I with them, and they, supposing that the master of the house had invited me, and we sat a while till food was brought, and we ate. Then they set wine before us, and the damsel came out with a lute in her hand. She sang, and we drank, till I rose to obey a call of nature. And thereupon the host questioned the 2 others of me, and they replied that they knew me not. Whereupon quoth he, "This is a parasite, but he is a pleasant fellow, so treat him courteously." Then I came back and sat down in my place, whilst the damsel sang to a pleasing air these 2 couplets. Say to the she-gazelle who's no gazelle, and cold Ariel who's no Ariel, who lies with male and yet no female is, whose gait is female most unlike the male. She sang it right well, and the company drank, and her song pleased them. Then she caroled various pieces to rare measures, and amongst the rest one of mine, which consisted of this distich: Bare heels and campground desolate, and friends who all have ganged their gait, how severance after union leaves me, and their homes in saddest state. Her singing this time was even better than the first. Then she chatted other rare pieces, old and new, amongst them another of mine, with the following 2 couplets. Say to the angry lovers who turn away, and shows thee his side whatso thou say, thou wroughtest all that by thee was wrought, able 'twas haply thy sport and play. I prayed her to repeat the song, that I might correct it for her. Whereupon one of the 2 men accosted me and said, Never saw we more impudent lip-platter than thou. Art thou not content with sponging, but thou must eke meddle and muddle? Of thy sooth, in thee is the saying made true, parasite and pushing white. So I hung down my head for shame, and made him no answer, whilst his companion would have withheld him from me, but he would not be restrained. Presently they rose to pray, but I lagged behind a little, and taking the lute, screwed up the sides, and brought it into perfect tune. Then I stood up in my place to pray with the rest, and when we had ended praying, the same man fell again to blaming me and reviling me, and persisted in his rudeness whilst I held my peace. Thereupon the damsel took the lute, and touching it, knew that it had been altered, and said, Who hath touched my lute? Quoth he, None of us hath touched it. Quoth she, Nay, by Allah, someone hath touched it, and he is an artist, a past master in the craft, for he hath arranged the strings and tuned them like one of a perfect performer. Said I, It was I who tuned it. And she said, Then Allah upon thee, take it and play on it. So I took it, and playing a piece so difficult and so rare that it went nigh to deaden the quick and the quicken the dead, I sang thereto these couplets. I had a heart, and with it lived my life. 'Twas seared with fire and burnt with loving low. I never won the blessing of her love. God would not on his slaves such boon bestow. If what I've tasted be the food of love, must taste it all men who love food would know. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 409th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Ishak of Mosul thus continued. Now, when I had finished my verse, there was not one of the company but sprang from his place, and sat down like schoolboys before me, saying, Allah upon thee, O our Lord, sing us another song. With pleasure, said I, and playing another measure in masterly fashion, sang thereto these couplets. Ho, thou whose heart is melted down by force of armor's fire, and griefs from every side against thy happiness conspire. Unlawful is that he who pierced my vitals with his shaft, my blood between my midriff and my breastbone he desire. 'Twas plain, upon our severance day, that he had his set mind on an eternal parting, moved by tongue of envious liar. He sheds my blood, he ne'er had shed except by wound of love. Will none demand my blood of him, my wreck of him require? When I had an end of this song, there was not one of them but rose to his feet, and threw himself upon the ground for excess of delight. Then I cast the lute from my hand, but they said, Allah upon thee, do not on this wise, but let us hear another song. So Almighty Allah increase thee of this bounty. Replied I, O folk, I will sing you another song, and another will tell you who I am. I am Ishaq bin Ibrahim al-Muzuli, and by Allah, I bear myself proudly to the Caliph when he seeketh me. Yet have ye today made me hear abuse from an unmannerly carle, such as I loathe. And by Allah, I will not speak a word nor sit with you till ye put yonder quarrelsome churl out from among you. Quoth the fellow's companion to him, This is what I warned thee against, fearing for thy good name. So they hint him by the hand, and thrust him out, and took the lute, and sang over again the songs of my own composing, which the damsel had sung. Then I whispered the host that she had taken my heart, and that I had no patience to abstain from her. Quoth he, She is thine on one condition. I asked, And what is that? And he answered, It is that thou abide with me a month, when the damsel and all belonging of her raiment and jewelry shall be thine. I rejoined, It is well, I will do this. So I tarried with him a whole month, whilst none knew where I was, and the Caliph sought me everywhere, but could come by no news of me. And at the end of this time, the merchant delivered to me the damsel, together with all that pertained to her of things of price, and a eunuch to attend upon her. So I brought all that to my lodging, feeling that I were lord of the whole world, and exceeding delight in her. Then I rode forthright to Al-Mamun. When I stood in the presence, he said, Woe to thee, O Ishaq! Where hast thou been? So I acquainted him with the whole story. And he said, Bring me that man at once. Thereupon I told him where he lived, and he sent and fetched him and questioned him of the case. When he repeated the story, and the Caliph said to him, Thou art a man of right generous mind, and it is only fitting that thou be aided in thy generosity. Then he ordered him 100,000 dirhams, and said to me, O Ishaq, bring the damsel before me. So I brought her to him, and she sang and delighted him. And being greatly gladdened by her, he said to me, I appoint her turn of the service every Thursday, when she must come and sing to me from behind the curtain. And he ordered her 50,000 dirhams. So by Allah, I profited both myself and others by my ride. And amongst the tales, they tell the tale of the 3 unfortunate lovers. Quoth Al-Utbi, It was sitting one day with a company of educated men, telling stories of the folk, when the talk turned upon legends of lovers, and each of us said his say thereanat. Now, there was in our company an old man who remained silent till all had spoken, and had no more to say, when quoth he, Shall I tell you a thing, the like of which you have never heard? No, never? Yes, quoth we. And he said, Know then that I had a daughter who loved a youth, but we knew it not, when the youth loved a singing girl, who in her turn loved my daughter. One day I was present at an assembly, wherein were also the youth, and Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my telling of these tales, till it be morrow.